He protected Elon Musk for 15 years, then was fired without a word. But when Ray Dunston uncovers a secret project that could save or destroy humanity, he faces an unthinkable choice: stop Elon or help him sacrifice everything. What's hidden beneath Elon's mansion will leave you questioning reality itself. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Ray Dunston woke up at 5:30 a.m., just as he had every day for the last 15 years. His alarm was unnecessary. His body had long synced itself to the rhythm of another man's life, Elon Musk's. Rain or shine, weekday or weekend, his mornings began the same. He swung his legs off the edge of the bed in his sparse apartment and stretched, the familiar creak in his knees greeting him like an old friend. He caught a glimpse of himself in the bathroom mirror. Silver streaks at the temples, tired eyes that had once been sharper, shoulders still broad but carrying the weight of more than just years. Ray wasn't just a bodyguard. He was a ghost in Elon Musk's shadow, always watching, always guarding, silent, unseen, essential. Something felt wrong this morning. It wasn't just the tight knot in his gut, or the way the air seemed stiller than usual. It was instinct, honed from a decade and a half of scanning for threats, anticipating dangers before they happened. Still, he told himself it was just another day. Another SpaceX meeting, another drive through the quiet pre-dawn streets of LA, another 12 hours orbiting Elon's unpredictable schedule. By 6:15, Ray was in his car, equipment checked, firearm secured at his hip, spare magazine in his ankle holster, communication gear tested and functional. As he rolled through the automated gate of Musk's estate, he gave a nod to the night shift guards, wrapping up. "Quiet night?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. "Yeah," said Marcos, the youngest on the team. "Boss was up late, though. Lights in his office till 3 a.m. Ray frowned slightly. Elon often worked late, but there was something different lately. More manic, less sleep, less food, more silence. Inside the house, he found Elon already up, hunched over his laptop at the kitchen island. A half-finished protein shake sat beside him, untouched for who knew how long. Elon didn't look up when Ray entered. "Morning," Ray said. Elon grunted, still typing furiously. The tension in his shoulders was unmistakable. This wasn't just late-night focus. It was something deeper, tighter, like a man being hunted by his own thoughts. Ray moved quietly through the morning routine. Security sweep, surveillance check, route planning. Jenna, Elon's assistant, arrived with the day's schedule. An 8 a.m. NASA call, Tesla board review by noon, a 2 p.m. interview. Elon nodded without looking up. By 7:30, they were on the road. Ray drove while Elon sat in the back, buried in his laptop. The silence was thick. "Everything okay?" Ray asked, catching Elon's eyes briefly in the rearview mirror. "I'm fine," Elon replied, flat. He looked back down. Ray didn't believe him. At SpaceX, the morning was a blur of engineers, rocket schematics, and high-stakes calculations. Ray moved through the building like a shadow, always close enough to act, never close enough to intrude. Elon was distracted, more than usual. Twice he asked Ray to wait outside during meetings, a rarity, and when he entered his private office with Vince Kaplan, the new head of special projects, Ray's unease deepened. Kaplan was cold, calculating, a man who never said more than necessary. When they emerged, Kaplan gave Ray a look he couldn't place. Pity? Regret? Warning? The tension followed them to Tesla. Elon barely touched his lunch. Ray, for once, said nothing. He'd warned Elon about exhaustion, about pushing too hard. But something told him this was different. Then at 3:15, Ray's phone buzzed with a message. "My office, 3:30. No context, no explanation, just an order. That had never happened before. At 3:29, Ray stood outside Elon's small Tesla office. He knocked once. Entered. Elon sat behind the desk, Vince Kaplan beside him. Neither looked up. "Close the door," Elon said. Ray obeyed. Elon finally looked up. His face was a mask. "Ray, I'm letting you go." The words hit like a gut punch. Ray didn't move, didn't blink. He'd faced stalkers, assassination attempts, corporate espionage, but this was unimaginable. "I don't understand," Ray said. "Your position is terminated. Effective immediately." Elon continued. "Vince will take over as chief of security." Kaplan slid a folder across the desk. 6 months severance, health coverage for a year. Ray didn't touch it. "Why?" he asked, voice tight but steady. Elon's eyes flickered. Something there, gone in an instant. "We're going in a different direction." Ray stared at the man he'd protected with his life for 15 years, the man he'd missed birthdays, weddings, and a life for. He expected betrayal from the world, not from Elon. 15 years, Ray said quietly. Elon looked away. 2 guards appeared at the door. Ray walked out without the folder, without a word. Outside, he sat in his car, hands gripping the wheel. For the first time in 15 years, he had nowhere to be, no one to protect. And in the pit of his stomach, Ray knew this wasn't just a firing. It was the beginning of something far, far bigger. Ray Dunston had always believed that silence could be a form of power. It's what made him such an effective protector. Quiet observation, quiet decisions, quiet action. But now, in the stillness of his apartment, that silence felt like suffocation. 3 days had passed since the firing. 3 days since the abrupt, impersonal dismissal from a man whose life he had molded his own around. Elon Musk hadn't called, hadn't offered a reason, hadn't said thank you. There had been no exit interview, no press release, just that cold, hollow line. "I'm letting you go." Ray had seen military commanders express more emotion when dismissing a rogue AI program, but Elon, nothing. The severance folder still sat untouched on his kitchen table, a painful reminder of his expendability. He hadn't opened it. Couldn't. Not yet. He stared at the photo on his nightstand. SpaceX launch day, years ago. Elon in the foreground, smiling at the camera. Ray just behind him, face unreadable, eyes scanning the crowd. Even in celebration, he'd been on duty. Always on duty. His phone rang, jarring him back into the present. Mira. His daughter. He hesitated before answering. "Hey, sweetheart." "Dad?" Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Is it true? About you getting fired?" Ray exhaled slowly. Of course it was out there. In Elon's world, nothing stayed private. "Where did you hear that?" "It's everywhere," Mira said. "Twitter, TMZ, even Business Insider. They're saying you were escorted out of Tesla headquarters. Some are saying you threatened him." Ray closed his eyes, pain rising in his chest. "That's not what happened." "Then what did happen?" Mira asked. "You've protected him forever. You missed my high school graduation because he needed you for some launch. You missed Mom's funeral. You missed everything." Her voice cracked. Ray swallowed hard. "I know," he said. "I made choices I thought were right at the time. I thought I was doing something important. Something that mattered. To him, maybe," Mira replied bitterly. "But what about us?" Ray had no answer, just silence. "Maybe it's for the best," she said finally, softer this time. "Maybe now you can actually live your life." Maybe. The word echoed in Ray's head long after she hung up. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. The skyline shimmered in the distance, a place full of ambition and noise. But Ray had spent so long in someone else's orbit that the idea of building something of his own now felt alien. That afternoon, he turned on the television for background noise, something to fill the oppressive quiet. The news was filled with speculation about his termination. Some called it an internal shakeup. Others hinted at scandal, betrayal, mental breakdown. None of it true, But none of it completely off the table either, because even Ray didn't know the real reason. He thought about calling Elon, demanding an answer, but he didn't. Something deeper than anger held him back. It wasn't fear, it wasn't pride, it was unease. The feeling in his gut from that last morning, the one he'd tried to ignore, was still there. Stronger now, sharper. Something was wrong. At 6:07 p.m., Ray's phone buzzed again. A name flashed across the screen. Dominic Rodriguez, his former second-in-command. Ray answered immediately. "Dom? Ray, you okay, man?" "As okay as someone who just got tossed aside like old furniture can be," Ray muttered. Dominic chuckled, but it was tight, forced. "Listen, I know I probably shouldn't be calling, but something's not right." Ray's spine straightened. Kaplan's making changes, big ones. Half the security team's been replaced in the last 48 hours. He brought in outside guys, military types, not Tesla veterans. Ray narrowed his eyes. "That's his prerogative." "That's not all," Dominic whispered. "They've sealed off the east wing of the Tesla facility. No access, even for senior staff. And the hours Musk is keeping? It's like he's living there, barely sleeps, doesn't eat." Ray's throat went dry. He'd seen Elon push himself before, but there were limits, and Ray had always been there to keep him from crossing them. Not anymore. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because I know you care. We all do. Something's happening, Ray. Something secret. Something big. And I think it started the day you got fired." Ray didn't respond right away. A low hum filled his ears. Adrenaline, memory, fear, duty, all surging at once. After 15 years of silence, this wasn't just about losing a job. It was a warning. The game, whatever it was, had already begun. The sun had long since dipped behind the San Francisco skyline, casting Ray Dunston's apartment into a pool of shadows. The city outside pulsed with life, but within the four walls of his modest home, Ray sat frozen, staring at a black SUV idling across the street. Tinted windows, government plates, motionless. They'd been there for over an hour. Ray didn't need confirmation, they were watching him. After Dominic's call, it didn't take long for more pieces of the puzzle to fall into place. First, a former SpaceX engineer messaged him on a secure app, saying there were whispers of a Project Phoenix. Top clearance, completely off the books. No one even knew what it was, but its name was being passed in hushed tones around key departments. Then Jenna, Elon's former personal assistant, called, in tears. "He's not the same," she said. "He's gone cold, obsessed, won't talk to anyone, won't even go home." Ray knew that version of Elon. He'd seen him retreat into himself before, but never like this. This wasn't vision-fueled isolation. This was something deeper, and far more dangerous. By the end of the day, Ray had stopped answering calls altogether. Too many voices, too many half-truths. The tension that had settled in his chest now pulsed like a second heartbeat. Then came the knock at the door. Ray moved silently to the table where he kept his firearm, an instinct hardwired over decades. Through the peephole, two men in suits waited. Crisp, dark suits. Earpieces. The kind of men who didn't knock twice. "Mr. Dunston," one called through the door. "We'd like to speak with you. It's about Elon Musk." Ray said nothing, waited, listened. After a full minute, the men turned and walked away, but not before slipping a card under the door. Plain white. No name, no agency, just a phone number. Ray didn't pick it up. Instead, he went to the window, lifted a slat of the blinds, and watched them return to the black SUV. He was being pulled into something he hadn't asked for, but couldn't ignore. As the SUV pulled away, his phone buzzed. Mira again. "Dad?" she said, her voice shaky. "That woman called me again." Ray's muscles tensed. "What woman?" She said she worked for Elon. She asked about Mom. Ray's blood turned to ice. Mira's mother, his ex-wife, had moved to Europe years ago. No one, especially not Elon or his team, should have had any reason to bring her up. What did you tell her? Nothing. But, Dad, she said to tell you, the phoenix rises from ashes, but first, there must be fire. Ray's hand gripped the phone tighter. That phrase wasn't just ominous. It was code. He'd heard Elon mutter it once, late one night during a long car ride to a Neuralink facility. Back then, it was just a line, a throwaway. But now it felt like prophecy. Sweetheart, listen to me, he said calmly. If anyone else tries to contact you, anyone, call me immediately. Don't engage, don't answer questions. Dad, Mira's voice cracked. Are you in danger? Ray paused, then, with more conviction than he felt, no, everything's fine. When the call ended, Ray sat in the dim light, the city's glow flickering through the blinds. He pulled out an old burner phone from a drawer, one he hadn't used in years, and turned it on. Minutes later, it buzzed with a text. Mr. Dunston, we need to meet tomorrow, 2 p.m., Bryant Street Coffee. Come alone. This is about Elon's safety. Kai Jiang, special assistant to Elon Musk. Ray stared at the screen. Kai Jiang? He'd never heard the name, and in 15 years of protecting Elon Musk, that was saying something. He looked around his apartment. The boxes he hadn't finished packing, the severance folder unopened on the table, the old security manual stacked on his shelf. For 15 years, he'd built his life around protecting one man, and now that man had gone silent, replaced his team, and launched a project so secret even Ray hadn't known about it. But one thing Ray did know. When people started asking questions about your daughter, when black SUVs sat outside your home, when anonymous men dropped by with plain cards and cryptic phrases, you weren't just being watched. You were being tested. Ray opened a drawer and pulled out an old notebook, one he used for keeping track of emergency contacts, contingency plans, and escape routes. He scribbled one word across the first empty page. Phoenix. Then, without hesitation, he circled the time and location of the meeting. Tomorrow, he would meet this Kai Jiang. And the moment he walked into that coffee shop, Ray Dunston knew nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Ray Dunston arrived at the Bryant Street coffee shop 30 minutes early, his instincts too honed to risk being caught off guard. Years of security work had hardwired him for moments like this. Controlled environments, escape routes cataloged, patrons profiled within seconds. He chose a corner booth with a full view of the front door and rear exit, a line of sight to every window, and his back to the wall. He ordered a black coffee he had no intention of drinking. His stomach was already a knot of ice. At exactly 2 p.m., the door opened, and a man in a sleek gray suit stepped inside. Early 30s, military posture, eyes scanning the room without appearing to. His gaze locked on Ray within seconds, and with a composed stride, he approached the table. Mr. Dunston, he said, offering his hand. Kai Jiang. Ray didn't take it. He merely nodded. Kai sat down anyway. Thank you for coming. You gave me little choice. Kai's smile was thin. On the contrary, you've had nothing but choices lately, and you've been making interesting ones. Ray leaned in. Start talking. Who do you work for? Because it sure as hell isn't just Elon Musk. Kai didn't flinch. I did work for the Pentagon's Advanced Research Division. Neural interface protocols, predictive analytics, quantum intelligence modeling. But 3 weeks ago, I was recruited into Project Phoenix. Ray blinked. Recruited? By whom? Elon. That landed like a blow. I worked with him for 15 years. Never heard your name. That was intentional. Project Phoenix was compartmentalized. Only those essential to its success were informed. You were a complication? Is that why I was fired? Kai nodded. Yes and no. Elon let you go because you were too close. Too loyal. He believed if you knew the truth, you'd try to stop him. Ray's jaw tensed. Stop him from what? Kai's expression darkened. He glanced around the cafe, then leaned closer. From fusing his consciousness with an artificial intelligence system that could either save humanity or destroy it. Ray stared at him, barely believing what he was hearing. That's science fiction. It's Phoenix, Kai said simply. A neural interface powerful enough to control a global satellite array, originally designed to enhance communication and defense systems. But now, after the deep space signals, it's become something else. Elon thinks a threat is coming, something that could wipe us out. He believes he's the only mind capable of directing the AI to stop it. And you don't believe him, Ray said. I believe he believes it, Kai replied. But that doesn't make it true or safe. Elon is brilliant, undeniably, but he's also obsessive, reckless. He's cut off his advisors, hidden the full scope of Phoenix, and isolated himself. You've seen it. You know he's slipping. Ray stayed silent. Kai continued, his voice steady. We need someone on the inside, someone Elon once trusted, someone who knows how he thinks. We need you. Ray's laugh was humorless. You want me to spy on him? Call it oversight, Kai offered. A counterbalance. Help us understand how far he's gone, what he's building, and if it can be stopped. In exchange, triple your former salary, full immunity, protection for you and your daughter. At that, Ray's eyes sharpened. Leave Mira out of this. She's already in it, Kai said quietly. People are watching her, not because of anything she's done, because of what you know. That's the game now, Ray. Whether you play or not, you're already on the board. Ray's blood went cold. And if I say no? Kai leaned back. Then we find another way. But more people may get hurt, Elon included. If he activates Phoenix without oversight, the consequences could be catastrophic. We're not trying to kill his dream. We're trying to stop a nightmare. He reached into his coat and slid a flash drive across the table. This has a redacted overview of what we know. It's not the full picture, but it's enough to show you we're not bluffing. Think it over. You've got 48 hours. Ray looked down at the flash drive. It felt heavier than it should. Kai stood. One more thing. Has Elon tried to contact you since your termination? Ray shook his head. Kai's face twitched with something that looked like disappointment. Interesting. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd reach out. He turned to leave, then paused. If he does, call me. Immediately. Ray watched him walk out of the coffee shop, the flash drive sitting between his fingers like a trigger he hadn't yet pulled. He didn't know who to trust, but something told him that the only truth now was buried inside that drive. And maybe in the man he used to protect. Ray Dunston sat in the dim glow of his apartment, the flash drive still untouched on his desk. The silence around him was a weight, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the old analog clock on the wall. A gift from Elon years ago, back when the world still made sense. He couldn't bring himself to sleep. His thoughts kept spinning in place, locked between past loyalty and present fear. Project Phoenix, neural fusion, the idea of Elon sacrificing his mind, maybe his life, for something he believed was coming. It was madness, or something far worse. A calculated brilliance that had left its humanity behind. Unable to resist, Ray reached for the flash drive. He wasn't stupid. He wouldn't plug it into any of his connected devices. Instead, he retrieved an old military-grade laptop from his closet, one with no network capabilities, stripped down for security. He booted it up and slid the flash drive into place. One document. Redacted, fragmented, but chilling. Project Phoenix, classified. Ray scrolled through line after line of blocked-out paragraphs, only catching glimpses of what lay beneath. Neural lattice interface, subject brainwave synchronization, AI satellite defense coordination. Then he stopped cold on a section labeled Safety Protocols. The only words that weren't blacked out read, Risk level, L5. Human cognition degradation irreversible. Subject mortality, 82%. Ray leaned back, heart thudding. 82%. This wasn't just a tech experiment. It was suicide dressed in circuitry. Before he could process more, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. A sinking feeling coiled in his gut as he picked it up. "Mr. Dunston?" A hushed, trembling voice. "Teresa?" Ray straightened, instantly alert. It was the housekeeper who had quietly kept Elon's mansion running for over a decade. "I'm sorry to call so late," she whispered, her voice laced with fear. "But something's wrong. With Mr. Musk." "What do you mean?" "He's not eating the food I leave. The bed untouched for days. He talks to himself now. And he's recording goodbye videos for his children." Ray's stomach turned to lead. "You saw them?" he asked, his voice low. "By accident. He didn't know I was in the study. He finished the last one 2 days ago. He was crying, Mr. Dunston. I've never seen him cry, not once in all these years." Ray's fingers gripped the edge of the desk. "Have you told anyone else?" "No," Teresa said. "The new security team, they watch everything. They even check my phone now. I had to borrow my neighbor's just to call you." Ray closed his eyes, dread spreading like fire. "Listen carefully. Can you meet me tomorrow morning, somewhere public, away from the house? I get 2 hours off for grocery shopping. I'll meet you. There's a coffee shop near the corner of 9th and Fairfax. I'll be there. And Teresa, be careful. Don't change your routine. Don't let them know you've spoken to me." Ray ended the call and sat in silence, his pulse pounding in his ears. Elon wasn't just spiraling. He was preparing for the end. The next morning, the coffee shop was quiet, the air thick with the smell of espresso and anxiety. Teresa arrived right on time, looking pale and exhausted. She slid into the booth across from Ray, glancing nervously at the window. "I shouldn't be here," she said, "but someone has to help him." "Tell me everything," Ray said. She did. About the strange Russian contractors who showed up 1 week before Ray was fired. About the basement no one was allowed to enter. About the machines, screens filled with what she called brain pictures, and a chair that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. And most alarming of all, Elon had begun talking about death as if it were a necessary cost. She said it would be worth it, Teresa whispered, that it would save everyone. Ray's hands trembled beneath the table. "There's more," she added. "I brought this for you." She reached into her purse and handed Ray a plastic access card. "It's the key to the private elevator. It goes straight to the basement." Ray stared at it. "Why give this to me?" "Because you care about him," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "And I'm afraid of what he's going to do." He pocketed the card, but a storm had begun to rage in his mind. If Kai was right, this technology could be catastrophic. But if Elon was right, then the world didn't have 6 months to argue. As Teresa left, Ray noticed a black SUV parked across the street. It was the same one he'd seen before, the same one that hadn't followed him but never seemed to be far behind. As she disappeared around the corner, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number, a message. "Stay away from Teresa Alvarez. Stay away from the mansion. This is your only warning." Ray stared at the screen, then at the access card in his hand. He wasn't staying away. He was going in. Tonight. The night air was thick with tension as Ray Dunston sat 3 blocks from Elon Musk's mansion, cloaked in shadows, the engine of his car off, windows cracked just enough to breathe. Every second dragged like an eternity as the digital clock on his dashboard ticked closer to 2 a.m. He wasn't just breaking into a billionaire's estate. He was breaking into a future that terrified him. He'd spent the day meticulously preparing. Maps of the mansion's layout, satellite views of security blind spots, a full inventory of surveillance cameras, many of which he'd personally installed. The irony wasn't lost on him. For 15 years, he'd been the guardian of this place. Now, he was its intruder. In his chest pocket was Teresa's key card, In his hip holster, a compact firearm, just in case. And in his mind, the image of Elon Musk slumped in that high-tech chair, surrendering his mind to a machine. At precisely 2:17 a.m., a time chosen not by chance but from his own notes on shift rotations, Ray slipped from his vehicle and moved like a phantom through the night. The mansion's west perimeter wall loomed in front of him, 12 feet of concrete topped with motion sensors and razor spikes. He crouched low behind a garden shed, reached into a pouch strapped to his thigh, and retrieved a device that looked like a flattened hockey puck, a failsafe he'd created years ago. He pressed it to a nondescript section of the wall, and the embedded panel clicked open. Emergency access, a secret entry Elon had approved during the early Tesla years. Just in case, they'd agreed. Inside the grounds, the mansion was dark, save for a strange blue glow emanating from one of the basement windows. Ray's breath caught. That hadn't been there the last time. He slipped between the cameras, darting from one blind spot to the next. His memory served him flawlessly. At the service entrance, usually used by catering or cleaning staff, he swiped Teresa's card. A soft click. The door creaked open. The interior was eerily still. Not the quiet of sleep, but the dead silence of something waiting. Ray moved swiftly through the kitchen, past the gleaming appliances and spotless counters, toward the center of the house, toward the study. He found it just as Teresa described, Elon's sanctuary of books and blueprints. Except something was off. A section of the bookshelf held pristine volumes, all new, no dust, no dog-eared pages. Ray's fingers hovered, then pressed gently against a volume labeled Quantum Genesis. The shelf shifted with a whisper, sliding aside to reveal a sleek steel elevator, its only interface a card reader. Ray swiped the card. The doors slid open. He stepped inside. No buttons, only a biometric palm scanner. He hesitated, then pressed his hand against it. The screen glowed green. Identity confirmed. Welcome, Ray Dunston. His blood froze. They hadn't removed him from the system. That couldn't be an oversight. Elon had left him in on purpose. The elevator began to descend. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Far deeper than any basement had a right to go. Finally, with a soft mechanical chime, the doors opened to reveal a space unlike anything Ray had ever seen. It was like stepping onto the set of a science fiction film, only this was real. The laboratory was massive and circular, the walls lined with glowing monitors, cables like neural tendrils trailing across the floor. In the center sat a chair, or a throne, wired to an array of computers and neural interfaces. A massive circular screen above it displayed shifting patterns that looked like brainwaves dancing with stars. Ray moved carefully, absorbing every detail. Screens pulsed with biometric data, scrolling code, and satellite telemetry, and in the center of it all, a countdown timer. 7, 18, 23. Just over 7 hours. He approached the chair slowly. It was more than a device. It was a gateway. Electrodes poised like the legs of a mechanical spider, vital monitors blinking in rhythmic pulses. The restraint systems, subtle but unmistakable. This wasn't just for scanning, it was for containment. Why would a machine designed to save the world need to restrain its user? Before Ray could examine further, he heard it. Footsteps, voices. Then the lab door clicked open. Elon Musk stepped into the room. But he didn't look like the Elon Ray had protected for 15 years. His face was drawn, his skin pale as parchment. His eyes, once electric with vision, were now hollow with exhaustion. A man who'd seen too far into the future and feared what he saw looking back. Yes, everything is ready, Elon said into a phone, not seeing Ray yet. No, I won't delay again. The window is perfect. It's tomorrow night or we lose everything. He ended the call and slumped into a nearby chair, head in his hands. Ray watched from behind a bank of monitors. The man who had inspired millions looked broken. Then Elon whispered aloud to no one. It has to work. It just has to. Ray knew then he didn't come just to stop this. He came to find the man he once believed in and decide if he could still believe in him now. The silence in the lab was almost reverent, broken only by the soft hum of machinery and Elon Musk's ragged breathing. Ray stepped out from behind the monitor bank like a ghost materializing from the past. Elon didn't look up. He didn't need to. "I knew you'd come," he murmured. Ray stopped a few feet away, scanning the room again, the countdown still ticking down with ominous certainty. 7:16, 8. "You left me no choice," Ray replied, his voice low, edged with disbelief and hurt. "You fired me. You erased 15 years of loyalty like it meant nothing, and now, here I am, sneaking into your lab like a thief." Elon turned toward him then, eyes bloodshot but lucid. "I didn't erase anything. I removed the one man who might stop me from doing what needs to be done." "You should have trusted me," Ray said, fists clenched. "You should have told me the truth." "I trusted you too much," Elon said. "That's why I couldn't let you in on this. You would have tried to protect me instead of humanity." Ray's jaw clenched. "So, you're sacrificing yourself? You think martyrdom is leadership?" "No," Elon said, his voice now eerily calm. "I think survival is leadership, and someone has to lead us through what's coming." He moved to a control console and brought up a live 3D projection. A digital Earth, surrounded by a web of satellites, and beyond it a red wave crawling slowly through deep space, approaching like an unseen predator. Ray's breath caught. "It's real?" he whispered. "The wave?" Elon nodded. 6 months, maybe less. It's not a question of if, only when. Ray stared at the simulation. There was no mistaking the magnitude of the threat. "Why haven't you told the world?" "Because they'd panic, and because they'd never allow what I'm about to do. Connecting my mind to Phoenix isn't just data sharing, it's fusion. Permanent. Once I'm inside, I won't come back. Not the way I am now." Ray shook his head slowly. "You're talking about surrendering your identity, your humanity. I'm talking about giving humanity a chance." Before Ray could answer, an alarm lit up across the monitors. Intrusion detected. He lunged for the keyboard, flipping through camera feeds. Men in black tactical gear stormed the upper floors. "Kai Jiang's team. They're here," Ray growled. "They're coming for Phoenix." "They'll shut it down before it ever activates," Elon said. "Unless we start now." Ray's instincts kicked in. "We need time. How long to initiate the sequence?" 5 minutes for full neural sync," Elon answered. 10 to stabilize Phoenix." Ray scanned the lab. There was no way they could hold off a government raid with just 2 people and a few scientists. He pressed his earpiece. "Jin, Sarah, are you in position?" "We're outside the perimeter," Jin replied instantly. "We saw the agents go in. What's the plan?" Ray looked at Elon, who had now sat down in the interface chair, IVs being inserted into his arm by a tech. "He's doing it," Ray said. "Phoenix is going live, but we need time." "We can give you 15 minutes max," Sarah added. "I'm hacking into the fire suppression system. I'll trigger a false alarm in the east wing. It'll pull them off course." "You're beautiful, Sarah," Ray muttered. "I know," she deadpanned. Moments later, alarms blared on the east side of the facility. Smoke began hissing from vents, sprinklers activating. The agents splintered their formation, diverting attention. Just as planned. Ray locked the doors to the lab manually, bracing a heavy beam against them. Inside the room, Elon was going pale as the neural sync progressed. His hands trembled slightly as electrodes pulsed with faint blue light. The large screen above now showed a second timer. Phoenix initiation, 9:48, 9:47. Suddenly one of the techs gasped. "Vital signs dropping, his brain activity is spiking too fast, we're losing him." "Can we stabilize it?" Ray asked, panicking. "Not with a single pattern," the lead scientist yelled. "Phoenix was designed to handle dual input, 2 minds to balance the load." Ray stared at the wires, the pulsing lights, then back to Elon, now trembling, bleeding from the nose. "Let me in," he said. "Connect me." The room froze. I've spent 15 years thinking like him, predicting his every move. If anyone can match his neural rhythm, it's me. The scientist hesitated, then nodded grimly. "It's never been tested." Ray removed his jacket, rolling up his sleeve. "Then let's test it." As the second neural interface was lowered over his head and the current began to surge through his skull, Ray clenched his fists against the searing pain. Then, suddenly, the lab disappeared, and he was no longer alone. Inside the network, floating through a field of thought and electricity, Elon's voice echoed. "Ray, you shouldn't have come." Ray answered without hesitation. "Then you don't know me at all." Everything changed the moment Ray's mind linked fully into the Phoenix interface. It was like plunging into a universe of light and code. Thoughts, images, equations, and emotions surged through him like waves of electric fire. His own consciousness blurred, then stabilized, and suddenly, he was no longer alone. Elon was there, not in body, but as pure thought, presence, memory, and purpose. "Ray, you really did it," Elon's voice echoed. Not spoken, but felt, like a vibration in Ray's bones. "I wasn't going to let you die alone," Ray replied, his own voice steady, though laced with awe. Around them, the Phoenix system roared to life. Satellites shimmered in Ray's vision like stars orbiting Earth in perfect synchronicity. The projected red wave, the alien signal or energy Elon had described, was now clearly visible in their shared awareness. It was massive, deliberate, and accelerating. Back in the physical world, technicians shouted updates through chaos. "Dual neural input confirmed. The pattern is stabilizing." Sarah's voice crackled through the intercom. "We've delayed the agents another 6 minutes. Do what you have to do." The screen above the lab transformed again. Phoenix was operational. The satellite shield began to form, an invisible network of protective frequencies, a cocoon encasing the planet. But then, a warning blared. "Unstable activity in Sector 9, energy spike from the incoming wave." Inside the neural link, Ray felt it. The force pushing against the shield, like a hurricane pressing against a glass dome. It was intelligent, probing, testing. Elon's thoughts pulsed with urgency. It's not just a wave, it's a message, or a weapon. Something made this. "Then we push back," Ray answered. Together they concentrated, shaping the Phoenix AI's defense parameters. The AI responded to their guidance with supernatural speed, adjusting frequencies, recalibrating satellite orientations, increasing signal strength in weak sectors. Ray had never imagined his mind could interface with something so vast, so alive, but the strain was unbearable. Back in the lab, Ray's body convulsed. Monitors screamed warnings, heart rate erratic, brain activity spiking dangerously. The scientist monitoring the feed looked pale. "If this keeps up, both of them—" "No," Sarah shouted from the control station. "Hold them in." "The system is syncing perfectly. They can do this." Inside the link, Elon's thoughts began to flicker. Pain, fatigue, memory loss. "You have to disconnect," Ray told him. "No," Elon said, but his presence dimmed. "Phoenix needs a core consciousness. Without me, the whole thing collapses. Then, I'll take your place." The silence in the link was deafening. Then Elon's thought voice returned, quiet, heavy with emotion. "That's why I fired you, Ray. Because I knew you'd do this. Because I couldn't bear to ask you to make this choice." Ray didn't hesitate. "I'm not making it for you. I'm making it with you. We finish this together." Suddenly, the network surged with energy, not from the alien force, but from within. Their shared minds had triggered a new phase in Phoenix's architecture. It wasn't just shielding the planet. It was learning from the invaders, adapting. Anticipate. Then came the final spike. The alien wave slammed into the shield. The impact rocked the Phoenix system. Power surged. Consoles in the lab exploded in sparks. Engineers ducked. The ground trembled. And then, silence. Above Earth, a ripple passed through the shield and broke against its invisible barrier. The system held. The red energy dispersed like shattered light against a mirror. Humanity had survived the first contact. Back in the lab, the two bodies in the chairs, Elon Musk and Ray Dunston, lay motionless. Life support hummed. The Phoenix interface showed stable readings. But the two men were no longer just men. They had become something else. Guardians of Earth, bonded to a machine that would never sleep, never forget. Hours later, when the agents finally breached the lab, they found the system sealed in an autonomous loop, untouchable. Kai Jiang stared at the screens in stunned silence. "He did it," he whispered. "They did it." Sarah sat beside Ray's unconscious body, holding his hand. "He was never just a bodyguard," she murmured. "He was the last person Elon trusted, and the only one who never walked away." The world would never know the full truth. Official reports described a successful satellite test, a minor malfunction, a heroic recovery. But in hidden files, in sealed vaults only a handful would ever access, the legend of Project Phoenix, and the two men who gave everything for it lived on. Somewhere beyond the cloud of code and satellites, Ray's consciousness stirred. "We did it," he said. And in the darkness, Elon's voice answered, "Now we watched." In a world driven by ambition, speed, and secrets, the story of Ray Dunston and Elon Musk reminds us that the true measure of loyalty isn't in how long you serve, it's in what you're willing to sacrifice when it matters most. Ray wasn't just a bodyguard. He was a silent guardian, a witness to greatness, and ultimately, a willing partner in saving humanity from a hidden threat no one else believed in. This inspiring story challenges us to consider the weight of trust, the price of integrity, and the courage it takes to protect someone, even after they've pushed you away. In today's fast-moving world where relationships are often transactional and loyalty is fleeting, Ray's unwavering commitment shows us the rare strength of character that still exists. Elon's willingness to risk everything for the greater good reminds us that innovation without compassion and sacrifice is hollow. So, what would you do if you had to choose between saving one person or saving everyone? If this story moved you, made you think, or left you inspired, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this, and share it with someone who still believes in the power of loyalty, courage, and doing what's right, even when no one's watching. Because sometimes, the world is saved by the people standing quietly in the shadows.